What's going on, everyone? Welcome to this new travel portrait photography editing workflow video. Now, if you haven't, be sure to click on the link in the description to read the full article where I share 5 tips to improve your travel portrait photography. It's a lot of fun. It's just, to me, travel and portrait kind of go hand in hand, even though I'm admittedly more of a landscape photographer. If I'm traveling to another country, specifically not to go photographing landscapes, for example, going to visit New York, or even though that's not another country for me, but going to Cuba or Nicaragua or Japan, when I go to those kinds of countries, I'm often like photographing people. And so I found this photo here. I think it's a great example. It gives me an opportunity to talk about some things that you probably will do often with your travel photos. And it gives me an opportunity to show you how I would edit this. And then also, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, especially with our Topaz apps, is the order in which we use things. And again, my answer to that is it always depends. You don't have to use all of our imaging apps. For example, Denoise AI, Sharpen AI, and Gigapixel AI. You use the apps based on the needs of the photo. So let's take a look at this photo here. You can see the resolution over here of the photo. It's a pretty small JPEG file, but I like this photo. It's a photo of, it's kind of a candid photo of this girl who's crossing the street here. And overall, compositionally, the girl herself, she's great. But for me personally, I don't like how busy the background is. She kind of gets lost with the traffic and the buildings, and also the blown out sky. And also kind of her position in the frame is kind of awkward. So for me, what I would do is I would crop this right off the bat. That's the first thing I would do is I'll press R in Lightroom. And I also want to make sure that we are set to the original aspect ratio and we lock it so that we always kind of retain the perspective and proportions of the aspect ratio. So I'm going to go ahead here and make a small crop box and position it on her, because I really just want to focus on her. Oftentimes, if you look at my my travel portrait photos, even the ones that I embedded in the article that I mentioned, I'm mostly focusing on the person, not necessarily the surroundings. Again, totally subjective, but this to me is a much better crop for a travel, kind of a candid shot of this girl smiling at the camera. So this is a good composition overall. Before we start doing anything with our apps, let's just use Lightroom to fix things up a bit. So first thing I'm going to do here is open up the exposure, make it a little bit brighter. And I actually want to separate her more from the background. And so there's a really great way to do that in Lightroom. To do that, we're going to use the masking tool, which is right here. It's this kind of shaded circle that's surrounded by broken lines. And I'm going to click on Select Subject first. And so Lightroom will use AI, and you can see that was like almost instantaneous. Its auto masking technology is phenomenal. Now, I don't want to initially work on the subject. I actually want to work on the background. So the easiest way to do that is to go to the actual mask itself, click on the ellipse, and then click on Invert. And that flips the selection. Now, I don't need the overlay here right now, so I'm going to disable that. And remember, I want to separate the subject, and one of the best ways to do that is to adjust tone or brightness. So I'm going to take the exposure slider here, and you can see how the background is getting darker. And she is popping off the screen. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take the saturation slider. I'm going to desaturate just a little bit, not too much. Now I want to work on this girl over here. So I'm going to create a new mask, and I'm going to click on Select Subject. And now with her selected, I'm going to disable the overlay. Let's open up the exposure. Let's open up shadows a little bit. And then let's also boost saturation, so that she really pops off the screen. And to me, that just looks good. You can see here, that's her mask. And if you want, you could rename these. You can say this is girl, and this one is background. So if you have a lot of masks, sometimes it helps to name them. And you can see here that this is, just by disabling, you see how much more she pops off the screen. And we didn't have to do anything with the adjustment brush or anything like that. Using AI with Lightroom's masking, it just made it super easy. And so that's really all we're going to do. And if we hit the backslash key to see the original, this is what we started with. And granted, this is also not including the original composition. This is just the post-crop edits we've made. She really pops off the screen now, which is what I want. So the other thing I'm going to do is add an S-curve. If you've watched my editing videos, you'll know that this is kind of how I like to add contrast. To add an S-curve, what I do is I drop 3 points at these intersections. This intersection here are the highlights. In the middle, that's the midtones. And this lower left intersection, those are shadows. And then these top and bottom dots, that's your white point and your black point. So if I take the highlights dot over here and I bring it up, we're going to open up highlights throughout the image. If I take this shadows dot and I bring it down, we're going to deepen shadows. And so you can see how rich the image is now with that boost of contrast. And then I'm going to take the midtone dot here and I'm going to bring it up and to the left a little bit to open up the midtones. And so you can see if we disable the tone curve, you see, even it's funny when after you add tone curve adjustments, like an S curve, for example, you don't realize just how much of an impact it has. So this is without any of that added contrast, and it just gets even more alive, which is great. I do see here there is a little something. Let me see if I take the healing brush. I'm going to make a really small brush. There's like a little strand or something. And so I'm going to make a small selection. And you know what? I don't know. I don't like it, but I don't want to spend too much time. That's okay, actually. It's a little darker, but there. Actually, no, I don't like that there. That's fine as it is. That's without the strand. Yeah, that's better. To me, the strand is just too distracting. For some reason, my eye goes to it. And I could spend more time kind of fixing it. Actually, there we go. There. Okay, perfect. I got rid of that one little bright spot. You could spend tons of time fixing that stuff, but for some reason, that strand really bothered me. All right, so here's the thing. Let's go back to grid for a second. The original image here was about 20 megapixels, but we cropped it severely. And so the first thing that I want to do is add a little bit of sharpness, because I can already see that even because of that heavy crop that we applied, the resulting resolution it just makes the image look a little kind of flat and soft. And this is, we're already zoomed in at 119%. If I click in, now we're at 100%. So you can see how small this image actually is. So what I'm going to do is right click, go to edit in, and then we're going to go to Sharpen Ai first. Now, if the image was noisy, I would go to denoise AI first. That would be the first thing that I would do. In fact, if I had a raw file that I was working on, I would probably send the raw file, and it was noisy, just to preface that. If I had a raw file of a portrait, for example, during travel, and it was noisy, I would send the raw file to denoise first, save a DNG, and then work on that. And we have videos walking through that I'll link in the description below. So we don't need to apply denoise, but we're going to skip that and go straight to sharpen. So I'm going to click on, actually before that, let me also just make sure that the image doesn't have any sharpening, which it doesn't. Sometimes by default, depending on your settings in Lightroom will apply a default amount of sharpening. I prefer to disable that. I bring the amount to 0 if I'm using Sharpen Ai. I use the sharpening in Lightroom. It's great for just kind of like quick hits of sharpness, but if I really kind of want to get more targeted sharpening, then I turn off sharpening in Lightroom and I just use Sharpen Ai. And again, that's something I do towards the end of my editing workflow. So there's really not much more that I will do with this photo as it is. Like I did most of my editing using these masks over here, and then I used the tone curve, which is why you don't see too much in the global settings over here. I'm not adding any clarity, any dehaze, or any texture. We took care of the color through the masks. Remember, we desaturated the background and we boosted saturation with the portrait in the foreground. So that's also one of my favorite ways of editing. Instead of using global sliders, oftentimes I'll just use masks to get more controlled edits. So again, we're towards the end of the edit here. I'm going to go to Edit In, go to Sharpen Ai. For the purposes of the video, I'm going to use JPEG. Normally, I'd either use TIFF or PSD, but just for the video, I'll do JPEG, and then I'm going to click Edit to launch it to Sharpen Ai. All right, so now that we are in Sharpen Ai, I'm going to go ahead and go to the comparison view. Let's zoom in to 200% and put the focus box on the face just so that we can see more clearly the effects. Now, currently, I have 4 different models that I'm comparing. This is standard with the auto parameters enabled. This is out of focus, blurry, too soft normal, and too soft very blurry. I'm going to go to standard here. I'm going to change it from motion blur to lens blur, and then back to motion blur. And actually between these 4, I think I like out of focus very blurry the most currently. So I've got my auto settings enabled here. I'm going to double click to bring it back to the 1-up view, and then I'm going to go to zoom to fit. Now, I really want the sharpening really only to apply to probably the face over here and the clothes. If I click and hold, you can see how it does look kind of soft, but Sharpen Ai does a really nice job of bringing out a lot of the edge detail. So we actually have a similar auto masking technology that to what I showed you in Lightroom. If you click on this select disclosure triangle and then click on the most appropriate option here, I'm going to select Auto People Portraits. Sharpen Ai will actually create a mask automatically around the person that it detects. And so you can see that there's the mask. There's a little spot there that I want to refine. So I'm going to go ahead here and click on Refine. And then I'm going to enable the overlay. And so the spot is right over here. So let's make a small brush and make sure that we're on subtract mode and just remove that over there. Now, because I really want to target more of the face, I'm also going to remove some of the sharpening from the hair. I don't like overly sharp hair, to be honest. So I'm just kind of going just around the edges here. I'm not going to remove it from the entire top of her head, just kind of the edges here. So let's turn off the overlay just to see. And that gives a nice kind of depth. It's not all evenly sharp. You have some sharpness in the foreground of the hair, and then as it goes back, it gets a little softer. But I also like that we brought some more detail to this, what looks like kind of a corduroy shirt. And there's not really any distraction over there. But most importantly, there's very pleasing sharpness added to the face. So now that we're done refining the mask, I'll click Update, and then let's click Apply to return back to Lightroom. And so you can see if we go to the grid view, we now have 2 images. And this is what I wanted the point I wanted to make. The original uncropped image was just under 20 megapixels, but the cropped image, I mean, we dropped it down to 1.5 megapixels. So it's a lot of resolution loss because of how we want to control the composition. And this is a very common thing. You know, remember, if we go here, let me do a virtual copy just so we retain it. But if I go to develop and I click reset, you can see like how she almost becomes like invisible in the entire image compared to this photo here, where she's I mean, you would argue that the point of taking this photo is to take a photo of this girl. The fact that she's standing in the middle of the street with all these cars and the blown out sky really kind of distracts me. So having this kind of photo to me is much more appealing. And then here you can see that we have some more sharpness. So now though, what I want to do is I want to bring back some of that resolution while retaining the original composition. And that's where Gigapixel AI comes in. So what we're going to do is right click, go to edit in, and then we're going to select Gigapixel AI. And just like before, I'm going to select JPEG and then click edit to head on over to Gigapixel AI. All right, so in Gigapixel AI, the first thing that I tend to do is choose the upscale factor. By how much do I want to increase the resolution of the photo? And you can see here, this is our source resolution, the original resolution of the image, which was 1.5 megapixels. If we apply a 4-time upscale, we'll get about a 24 megapixel image, which is great. That's the typical sensor size of, say, a Sony A7 camera. If we went to 6-time, you get even more resolution, but we don't need that for the purposes of this photo. 24 megapixels is plenty. And what I want to do is make sure that when we upscale, that we're preserving as much of the face, the details of the face as possible. If we go ahead here and we zoom to say 100% and we focus on the face, you can see that it's okay. There's some weird things going on in the teeth and the eyes. That's where this face recovery AI model comes in. This was something that we just released with Gigapixel AI version 6.1, and it's amazing. It's especially helpful whenever you're upscaling a portrait photo, whether it's a composed portrait photo in a studio or a travel, a candid shot. So what I'm going to do is enable that model here, and you can see that it's so much better. The results are so much better if we zoom out a little bit, just so you can get more context. The details are totally natural, and we're still retaining all those important edge details as well. There's also this face recovery strength slider. The higher the setting, the more we will attempt to blend the face. So you can see here, if we go all the way to 100%, it'll be a bit smoother. There's more of that kind of noise reduction look to it. We don't need that here. I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to about 49 or 50. And that to me is a very natural look. And you can see if we click to see the original, you see how everything looks very blocky and all those details aren't really there. It just looks kind of pixelated because what we're doing is we're taking a 1.5 megapixel image and we're trying to quadruple the resolution. So when we let go, you can see it's just a nice, clean photo. And I find that the low resolution model works especially good here. Standard is another great model to consider, but I really do like low resolution. You can also try to enable auto settings to see what works. There is no noise in this photo, so I don't really need to have any noise reduction. And we already applied sharpening with Sharpen Ai, so remove blur. I don't need that much. Probably like around 10 is all I need. And so now that I'm done, I'm going to click on apply and we'll return back to Lightroom. All right, so you can see here, again, we can get rid of this virtual copy. We don't really need that right now. But we had a 19 megapixel image. That was our source image. And actually, if I undo that, this was the original composition over here, where the girl was just kind of blending in with the background and almost getting lost in the background. So then we recomposed with a heavy crop, which brought us to a 1.5 megapixel resolution. And we used Sharpen Ai to add the detail that we kind of didn't have or lost. You can see, even if we go, this is the original photo, and then the Sharpen Ai photo, things like the detail in the shirt and in her face. This is the original, like the eyes just kind of snap into place. It's really nice. And then we used Gigapixel AI to bring the resolution not even back to its original, but we actually exceeded the resolution just by a little bit. So we went from 19.3 megapixels to 24.5 megapixels, which is great. Now we have a lot more resolution to work with. If we need to, for example, want to print it on a large format print, it just gives you more flexibility than working with a 1.5 megapixel photo. And so that is the workflow that I would use for this kind of a photo. The first thing I do is I recompose the photo to get the shot that I want. And this is very common when you're out traveling. You might not have, for example, a long lens on. In fact, you probably don't, because typically long lenses, they're huge. Your camera body is typically black. Long lenses often are white. And so you're just bringing attention to yourself, especially if you're holding that to your face. You have this giant Canon, not the Canon camera, but like almost like a hand cannon sticking out of your face. I prefer using smaller, more subtle lenses. Typically, those are wider angle, which means that I have to kind of, I'm going to have to recompose to something like this. Then we use Lightroom again. This is let's look at the original. So that was all we did here was we cropped, but then we used Lightroom's AI-driven masking to really refine the look of the photo. Then we used Sharpen Ai here to bring those details. And then finally, we used Gigapixel Ai to restore that resolution that we lost when we did that heavy crop. So if you want to give Sharpen Ai, Gigapixel Ai, and Denoise AI a shot, head over to topazlabs.com. You can download free trials of all three of the apps, try them with your photos, and see how they work. And I hope you found this workflow tutorial helpful. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thanks a lot.